First of all, I'd say I'm raging the minister has left because I have a few comments, obviously. First of all, he talked about driving down the unemployment. Most of them people that will, in areas that from like mine, will be driven into low paid employment. We don't have the framework, the tools or the mechanisms to go back into well paid jobs because we weren't in them in the first place. So it doesn't really, I don't really think that should be the driving force of them looking to drive recovery. He kind of alluded to education at the end, but that actually should be the main driving force for an inclusive recovery. So I'll just get that out of the way first. So I've one slide, mainly because I'm in the middle of an exam period and I've just came out of writing about Thomas Aquinas and the fact that God is not made up of spatial parts and he doesn't exist in space and time. And I kind of was sitting in the exam going, that's a bit like recovery for us, you know, it doesn't actually exist in space and time. For us, that's... I had very bad experience with education right back to when I was 3. My mother was told to find me a new play school because I kicked up a fuss that the ties weren't being shared at an equal time. I wasn't getting my fair share. And I was actually had to change play school, so that set the ground from there. I left school when I was 15 when I became pregnant, but it wasn't really a hard decision. I didn't really do too well in school. And then my saviours on Kazan came in and they had a pilot programme for young mothers. And I excelled in that in the sense I was holistic. It met me at the level that I was at and it didn't try to jam us all into the one model, and it allowed us learn on an individual setting and allowed us ask questions, something that we didn't really get to do in school. You were seen as disruptive in my school, especially me. I'd have questions on everything and God forbid you take them away from the curriculum. So that's Tallaght inside the dome, okay? And during the boom years, there was a tiny little hole. This is the only really way I can explain how I feel in Tallaght. There was a tiny little hole in the top of that dome. And somebody would either come in and drag you out if you were lucky enough, or else you'd not get tired and you'd keep running and running and running. You'd finally get out. But most people in Tallaght will keep trying to succeed. They want to succeed. They want jobs. They want an education. But there's so many obstacles in the way that they just keep running and they just keep bouncing off that glass and back in, and at some time you just get tired and you just accept how things are. Now, for us to feel an inclusive recovery would kind of mean that we were in a position to be recovered. We need rehabilitation. We need to be actually brought to life, because even in the boom years, we still weren't at a point where the middle class and the upper class were. So it's not about recovery for us and just bringing us back to a decent health and a decent level. It needs to be much more aggressive and penetrating into society, and they need to target areas like Tallaght. I use Tallaght, but it's just really a generic form for any working class area. And they keep calling us working class, but the majority of people I know don't actually work. We're actually the social welfare class. But sometimes working class seems like we have the potential to work, so they'll just call us that anyway. So during the recession that we paid for through our austerity measures, addiction grew, homelessness grew, deprivation, poverty, everything. So for us to feel recovery, we would first actually need to address all those other things first before we can even start looking at being able to be part of the employment force. So, talking about unemployment figures going down and market recovery and all these things, that just means nothing to us. It means nothing to us at all. What means something to us is actually coming in and setting up more places like on Kazan, more community-led places, looking at education. I went up to the school in Killinarden a few weeks ago and I asked the guidance counsellor how many people are going to go to college this year, how many are talking about going to college, and he said, oh, it's a great number, and I was getting excited and I was like, really, how many? 3 are thinking about going to college. And and I just thought that's so sad, because when you grow up in Tallaght, education, it's not that it's not being reinforced at home, or that parents don't want an education for their children. But if the biggest success you'll have in your life is getting your kids to a Leaving Cert, that's huge. If the next biggest thing is they don't go into addiction, or they don't go into criminality. So when you're faced with them kind of choices every day, that's what you're trying to protect your children from, it's very hard to motivate them to go on to education, because we base our success on surviving, on not smoking or binge drinking. So, you know, when we think of inclusive recovery, I just don't think it applies to us, and I don't think it's this trickle-down effect. It's not going to trickle down. I mean, I'd want to be a meteor to come down on top of us to get in there, in behind that glass, that state-imposed, class-imposed glass that's placed around us. And, you know, I'm lucky enough, I've managed to get out, right? And that's not how I want it. What I want is that I can flourish within that community, that I can have an education within that community. It shouldn't be about me having to escape Tallaght. So many people have said to me over the past few weeks, oh, soon you'll be able to buy a house, you know, you'll keep working hard, work pays off, you'll be able to buy a house somewhere nice. I look and going like, I don't want to buy a house somewhere nice. I want Tallaght to be able to succeed. I want people to invest in Tallaght. And I think education is one way that people need to invest in Tallaght. It's a short-term investment for a long-term gain. And I believe if you have an education, you're less likely to suffer with mental health issues. You're less likely to go into criminality, to end up in addiction. Now, of course, there is people that still do, but on the majority, that can change. And I think why my story has made the headlines recently is because I'm the exception to the rule, and everyone thinks it's great. And look what you've done. The system has worked. It works. Look, she's done it. She's out. She's grand. Why aren't the rest of them doing it? But what people don't understand is that that's the problem, that I'm an exception to the rule, and no one's looking at that. And this whole kind of attention on me lately, it more unnerved me at the fact that people have noticed. And instead of looking that everyone else hasn't made it, I kind of feel like, oh, I'll give all that up and go back and just be one of them and help. You know what I mean? Instead of going, actually, I need to change that. Like, I hope in 5 years, 10 years, it will be an exception to the rule that some D4 private fee-paying school is president of Trinity College. Oh, look, you know, the working class wasn't president. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of space that I want to get to. And you know, so I don't really know what else to say other than I didn't really prepare anything, because, as I said, I'm in exam period, and I'm finding it hard to take in any other information other than philosophy and politics, which I suppose this is. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.